title, Camo Pattern, is marketing. What deer actually see. Every fall, you buy a new camo pattern to hide from an animal that's colorblind and can't see detail past 60 feet. The deer never saw last year's pattern either. You're the only one who can tell them apart. That's not a hunter's tale. That's the biology, measured in a lab, and it's the exact opposite of what the camo industry has spent 40 years training you to believe. And it starts with a color the law forces you to wear, one the deer can't even see, while the faded blue jeans you drove to the stand in are lighting up in its eyes like a road sign. I want to be careful here, because this is the part where a lazier video would tell you camo is a scam and you've been robbed. That's not what I'm going to do, because it isn't true, and you'd catch me the second I said it. What I'm going to do is give you the part the marketing department leaves out. I've stood behind the counter and rung up the $400 jacket and the $12 tube of face paint. I've watched a guy talk himself into the newest pattern because last year's pattern was, in his words, probably why he got busted. I've read the same published research the camo companies have read, the research they are counting on you never opening. So let me walk you through what a deer's eye can and can't do, what that means for the money in your wallet, and where the concealment actually comes from, because some of it is real, and the part that's real is not the part they charge you for. Start with the eye itself, because everything downstream comes from this. Back in 1992, a team at the University of Georgia, names worth knowing because these are the people who did the work, Jacobs, Deegan, Neitz, Miller, Marchinton, put deer under an instrument that measures which wavelengths of light the eye responds to. Not a survey, not a guess. A direct physiological readout published 2 years later in a peer-reviewed journal of comparative physiology. And what they found is that a whitetail has two kinds of color-detecting cones. One peaks in the blue range, around 455 nanometers. The other peaks in the yellow-green range, around 537. That's it. 2. You have 3. You've got that third cone, the long wavelength one, the one that lets you tell a red apple from a green one, a blaze orange vest from the brown leaves around it. The deer does not have it, which means a deer is, functionally, red-green colorblind. The same way some men in your family are colorblind, where red and green and orange all collapse into shades of the same muddy non-color. When a whitetail looks at your orange vest, the orange information simply isn't there. There's no cone in its eye built to catch it. It sees a gray thing. And that is why blaze orange got picked as the safety color in the first place, back after a run of hunters shooting other hunters in the 1960s. People see it instantly. It doesn't exist in nature, and the game animals we hunt can't distinguish it. The whole safety system is built on the deer's blind spot. The camo industry knows this. It has always known this. There's a wrinkle worth being precise about, because being precise is the whole reason you trust the rest of what I tell you. Red-green colorblind does not mean the deer sees in black and white. It's not a colorless world. The deer has real color vision, just a 2-channel version of it instead of your 3-channel one. It can tell blue from the yellow-green-brown side of the spectrum with no trouble. What it can't do is split that yellow-green-brown side into the separate colors you see. Red, orange, green, tan. For the deer, those are variations on one theme. So when I say it can't see your orange, I mean it can't pick the orange out from the browns and greens around it. The orange doesn't pop. It sinks into the background like everything else on that end of the spectrum. And here's where it curdles into something close to a bad joke. Nearly every deer state in the country writes that blind spot straight into the law. Most of them require blaze orange during firearm season, anywhere from 100 to 500 square inches of it, usually 400 or 500, above the waist, where another hunter can see you. Only a small handful of states, Alaska, Arizona, California, Idaho, Nevada, have no requirement at all. And a lot of those states go further. They demand solid orange, and they specifically will not let camo pattern orange count toward the minimum. Read that the way a deer would. The law is arguing about the exact shade and coverage of a color the deer processes as gray, mandating the loud version, banning the broken up version, all for a safety benefit that is entirely 100% aimed at the eyes of other humans. Which is fine, that's what it's for. Blaze orange saves human lives, and I'd never tell you to skip it. But sit with the fact that the single most regulated element of what you wear into the woods, the one thing the state checks you for, is invisible as a threat to the animal you're there to hunt. The whole apparatus is built around your eyes, and the game warden's eyes. The deer was never in that conversation. So here's the first thing that should bother you. If the animal can't tell orange from green from brown, then the wrong color you've been scared of your whole hunting life. It was never the threat. The threat is somewhere else entirely. Let me show you where. The deer paid for that missing red cone with something else, and it's a brutal trade in the hunter's favor and against you. Two things. First, low light. A deer's eye is built for the exact moments you're most likely to be moving. That gray half hour at dawn and the gray half hour at dusk. Broad, heavy retina, a huge pupil, and that mirror behind the retina, the tapetum, the thing that makes their eyes glow in your headlights. It bounces incoming light back through the sensors a second time, so the eye gets two chances to catch every photon. The National Deer Association puts the low light advantage at something like 18 times better than a human. 18 times, when you can barely make out your own boots in the gray, the deer is reading the woods like it's afternoon. That's the window most deer get killed in, and it's the window the deer owns. Second, and this is the one that gets you busted on a hunt, blue. Remember, the deer kept its blue cone. It didn't just keep it. The deer's eye handles short wavelength light far better than yours does. Your eye has a built-in yellow filter in the lens that blocks most ultraviolet and tames the blue end of the spectrum. It's there to protect your retina and keep your vision sharp as you age. The deer's eye does not have that filter. Nothing's blocking the blue, so a deer sees blue vividly. The NDA figures it at nearly 20 times better than a human sees it. 20 times. Keep those two numbers together in your head, because they're the whole argument. Orange, invisible. Blue, 20 times louder than you'd ever guess. Now hold those facts next to each other, because this is the game. The deer cannot see your orange. The deer sees blue like a floodlight. And what's the one fabric almost every hunter has worn to the woods at some point, the one nobody thinks twice about? Blue jeans. Carl Miller, the UGA researcher whose lab did a lot of this work, said it about as plainly as a scientist will. Some people still refuse to wear blaze orange, but they'll wear blue jeans to the stand, and that's exactly backwards. The deer picks up the blue and misses the orange. You've been managing the wrong color your entire hunting life, sweating the vest the deer can't see, ignoring the denim the deer can't miss. Think about how backwards that is. The color you were scared of was safe, and the color you never thought about was the loud one. And it goes past denim. That yellow lens filter you have, the one the deer lacks. It's also why the deer can catch ultraviolet, the light that sits just past blue, the light your eye throws away before it ever reaches the back of your eye. There's fresh work on this too. In 2025, researchers at Georgia went out and measured buck rubs and scrapes, because I'm not going to sell you a panic the way the companies do. There is a real debate about how much the glow matters in the field. Some hunters swear a deer clocked them from a fluorescing jacket. Others have had deer walk right under a stand wearing whatever came out of the dryer. I can't settle that for you, and I won't pretend to. The strongest claim you can stand behind is this. A deer can see the glow. The physics of that is not in dispute, and it costs you nothing to stop feeding it, which brings us to the neat little trap the industry built on top of it. There are products, sprays, special hunter's detergents with no brighteners, sold to solve the exact problem regular detergent created. And here's the mechanism, straight from the folks who sell the fix. One normal wash redeposits the brighteners and undoes the treatment. So it's not a thing you buy once. It's a thing you buy and then keep buying, because the ordinary detergent under your sink resets it every laundry day. That's not concealment. That's a subscription you didn't know you signed. All right, let's talk about the pattern itself, because this is the center of it. This is where the real money lives, and this is the claim I have to test straight instead of just torching. How sharp is a deer's vision? Not very. The same UGA line of research estimated a whitetail's daytime acuity somewhere in the range of 2060 to 2100. Take the kinder number. 2060 means the detail you'd resolve standing 100 feet away. The deer has to close to 60 feet to resolve. Its world is soft. It's a smeared, low-resolution image, built for catching motion in dim light, not for reading fine print. And a camo pattern. The little bark texture, the photorealistic leaf edges, the 3D shadow detail the newest patterns brag about. That is fine print. That is exactly the kind of detail a 2060 eye cannot resolve at any distance where it would matter. The deer is physically incapable of seeing the thing you paid extra for. Sit with that, because it's the core of the whole racket. The premium the industry charges, the reason this year's pattern costs more and looks more realistic than last year's, is built entirely around detail. Sharper leaves, truer bark, more convincing depth. And detail is the one thing the target animal's eye is built to throw away. You are paying a premium for resolution to fool an animal that sees the world at 2060. It's like selling a nearly blind man a sharper television and charging him for the extra pixels he was never going to catch. Now, here's where I keep my word and give you the honest half, because the honesty is the only thing this channel actually has to sell you, and I'm not going to burn it to win an argument. Camouflage as a concept is not worthless. It is not a scam. There's a real thing it does, and the real thing has nothing to do with the pattern's detail. What breaks up a human being in the woods is the outline, your silhouette. That vertical, symmetrical, unmistakably a predator shape that nothing else in the woods has. What good concealment does is shatter that outline into pieces that don't read as a shape and match the overall brightness of the background so you don't sit there as a bright blob or a dark hole. Break the shape, match the brightness. That's the mechanism. And here's the tell. The smart camo designers already know this, and one line of premium patterns will basically admit it if you read what they say about their own product. The more scientific patterns were designed around exactly two ideas: breaking up the large-scale outline at a distance and controlling brightness so you blend into the background's value, whether you sit against a bright sky or a dark trunk. That's it. Macro shapes to kill the silhouette, brightness matched to the setting. When the people building the highest-end concealment describe their own design goals, they talk about outline and brightness. They do not talk about how realistic the bark looks up close, because up close doesn't matter to an eye that can't resolve up close, and they know it. So notice what's not in the real mechanism. Not one word about photorealistic leaf edges. A blob of light and dark that breaks your outline and sits at the right brightness does the entire job. The specific licensed print stapled on top of that, the sharper, more realistic version they roll out every season, does almost nothing the deer can see. The part that works is old and boring. The part they sell you is new and shiny. Those are not the same part. So here's the reveal, the thing that ties every piece of this together into one machine. The camo industry is not primarily in the concealment business, it's in the pattern licensing business. And a licensing business has one requirement to survive. You have to keep buying new patterns. Follow the money and it stops being confusing. Realtree, and this is Realtree's own number, off their own business page, not mine, says more than 2,000 licensees put their pattern on more than 30,000 products, and that around $4 billion of their camo and branded products sells every year. $4 billion. Mossy Oak runs the same model with its own stable of licensees, somewhere near 1,500 of them. And listen to how Mossy Oak describes what its pattern does for a company that buys the license. This is on their own licensing page. They say putting the pattern on your product lets your customers identify themselves as part of a tribe and gives you brand strength. Read that again. Tribe. Brand strength. That is not the language of hiding from a deer. That's the language of selling an identity to a human. They said the quiet part out loud on their own website to the businesses buying in. And here's the pattern churn engine underneath it, the reason there's a new one every fall. If the pattern genuinely defeated deer vision, you'd buy it once and be done. It'd work forever, because deer eyes don't get upgrades. The eye that got measured in 1992 is the same eye out in the woods this season. Evolution did not ship a firmware update to catch Realtree's latest release, so a pattern that truly worked would be a one-time sale, and a one-time sale is a terrible business to be in. What keeps $4 billion a year moving is the feeling, the one I watched wash over guys at the counter, that this year's pattern is a little better, a little more realistic, a little more likely to be the reason you fill the tag. A whitetail's eye cannot tell this year's pattern from the one 3 seasons ago. It can't resolve either one, but you can tell them apart, and you're the one with the wallet, and you're the one they're actually selling to. The deer was never the customer, you were, and once you see the licensing model, the rest of the industry's shape makes sense too. When a clothing company wants to put Realtree or Mossy Oak on a jacket, it doesn't just borrow the pattern, it pays a royalty on every unit, a cut of the wholesale price. and that cut rides on top of everything else the garment costs. Apparel licensing like this generally runs in the neighborhood of 6 to 10% of wholesale. Realtree, for its part, won't publish its rate. They'll tell you it gets discussed after you're approved as a partner. So, every licensed camo jacket on the rack has a little tax baked in, paid to a company whose product is a picture, collected on a garment, sold to fool an animal that can't resolve the picture. And now, look at the top of the market. Sitka, First Light, KUIU, the $500 names. A lot of what they're doing when they build their own proprietary pattern instead of licensing someone else's is refusing to pay that tax. They own the picture, so they don't have to rent it. That's a legitimate business move. Just notice what it tells you. Even at the high end, the pattern is being treated as a brand asset to be owned and controlled, not as a piece of optical engineering that had to come out a specific way to defeat a deer. If the science dictated the pattern, they'd all converge on the same answer. Instead, every company has its own look, trademarked and defended, because the look is the product. One scientist put the whole thing in a sentence better than I can. Bradley Cohen, who studies deer vision at Georgia, stood in front of a room of deer researchers and called it a multi-million-dollar industry built on hopes and crossed fingers about what deer perceive, and then reminded them that deer do not perceive their world anything like the way we perceive ours. Hopes and crossed fingers. That's the man who helped measure the eye, describing the thing they charge you a premium for. When the person who did the science and the person who wrote the ad copy disagree this hard, I know which one is holding the price tag. So, what do you do with this? Here's the payoff I promised you up top, and none of it runs through the checkout counter. Movement is the giveaway, not color, not pattern, motion. That fast, dawn-tuned, wide-angle eye, close to 300 degrees of field of view, almost all the way around its own head, is a motion detector first, and everything else a distant second. It's not built to study you. It's built to catch the one thing that twitched. The stillest hunter in the cheapest solid brown coat beats the twitchiest hunter in the $400 suit every single time. Slow down. That's free, and it outperforms everything on the rack. Kill the blue. This is the highest value change on the whole list, and it costs you nothing. No denim to the stand, ever. And wash your hunting clothes in a detergent with no optical brighteners, or just stop running them through the bright stuff. Because the brightener glow is real in the one band a deer sees best, and killing it is free after the first correct choice at the store. Match the brightness, break the outline. If you're buying, buy for that. A pattern with enough light and dark contrast to shatter your silhouette in an overall brightness that matches where you actually sit. A solid earth tone that matches the wood's value will outperform a pretty photorealistic pattern that's too dark or too light for the background it's sitting against. Value beats detail, every time. And here's the money line, because this is a channel about your money. That outline-breaking, brightness-matching job, it does not cost $400. It does not cost $500. A surplus field jacket in an honest olive drab runs you somewhere between $25 and $125, depending on how picky you are, breaks your outline just fine, and reflects no more light than the woods around it. The $500 premium jacket may be a better garment, quieter fabric, warmer fill, more weatherproof, better cut. And if you're sitting all day in the cold and the wet, those things have real value, and I'll say so plainly. Pay for the fabric if you want the fabric. Pay for the warmth, the silence, the waterproofing. Those are real, and they're worth money. Just know exactly what you're paying for, and know that the photorealistic pattern printed on it, the specific thing the marketing puts front and center, the thing that changes a little every fall, is the one component in that jacket the deer's eye is physically built to ignore. So the next time you're standing in the aisle, and the new pattern's calling to you, the one that's a little sharper and a little more real than the one already hanging in your closet, ask the only question that matters, not, can I see the difference? You can. That's the trap. The whole business runs on the fact that you can. Ask instead, can the deer? And the lab already answered that one, back in 1992, with an instrument pressed up against the eye itself. 2 cones, no red, 2060. A soft gray world where your orange vanishes and your blue jeans blaze, and where a leaf's fine detail, the thing they charge you extra for every single fall, was never going to land at all. The pattern was never for the deer. It was always for you. And now you know which one you are in that transaction. I'll leave you with this. The best hidden hunter I ever sold to spent almost nothing on clothes and everything on knowing where to sit, when to move, and how to keep the wind in his face. He wore the same faded, solid coat for 15 years. He filled his tag most every season. He wasn't hiding from the deer's eyes. He was staying out of the way of everything that eye is good at. The motion it hunts for, the blue it can't miss, the low-light window it owns. That's the whole secret, and it was never for sale in the first place.